Hello, listeners, and welcome to the Dual Screens podcast. Also, it's October, my favorite time of the month, or the year, I should say, not month. I'm a little giddy today because October means we're doing horror games galore on the podcast. So we're promising 4 to maybe 6 weeks straight of horror game coverage on the podcast. And to kick things off, we have a game that looks bananas, bonkers, crazy, and it's out very soon. So joining us this week is Nath Hamley, developer of Chasing Static, a PS1 style psychological horror game coming to PC on October 14th. Nath, welcome to the show. How's it going, man?
Hey, it's going very well. Thanks. Thanks for having me on. Good
Yeah,
to
thank
talk
you.
to you.
Thank you for kicking off our month-long coverage of all things horror and spoopy. It's a
Happy to.
long,
Happy to. Yeah.
I think it's like
Sounds good.
our third year doing this, and every time it's like, couldn't every single month be October? It's just
All the spooks.
such a magical time of the year. Now, before we jump into things, can you believe that Silent Hill 2 just turned 20 years old recently?
It's crazy. It's
It's a
crazy. I feel old. I always feel old, but I feel especially old when you hear stuff like that.
it's like when you hear that some Nintendo game just turned 35, it's like, okay, it's not too bad, whatever. It's okay. But like when PS1 games or PS2 games start approaching the decades old anniversary, it's like, oh God,
Yeah.
time is running out. But yeah, Silent Hill, that's one of my favorite horror franchises ever, and I sorely miss it. And seeing your game, it just takes me back to that special place of where that franchise first began, and actually where a lot of great horror games first began on the PS1. And your game is adopting that graphic style. So tell us, what is Chasing Static? Give us the elevator pitch of this game.
Sure. So yeah, Chasing Static is a slow-paced, moody, psychological horror short story. It's set in Wales, which is here in the UK. It's a very rainy kind of um, quite rural sort of. There aren't, well, I mean, Wales is huge, but like where the game's set is like a remote rural location with a lot of woodland and like a small little sort of Welsh village, and some deep dark secrets that you uncover. So you play out the game. You play as this guy Chris, who's come back to Wales to attend his late father's funeral. He had didn't have the best relationship with his father, so he hadn't spoken to him in a long time. And he heard about obviously his father's passing, so he returned for his funeral. And on his way home from the funeral, he gets wrapped up in a lot of crazy stuff, kind of somewhat typical horror affair. But he ends up getting stuck in this small like area of Wales, and he's trying to find a way out and can't find a way, can't leave. His everything he tries to do to leave prevents him from doing so. And yeah, you uncover sort of some mysterious government secrety stuff. That's probably about as much as I can give away without spoiling the game, as it's a short game. Yeah, there's stuff like we were chatting before the podcast about how the demo ends on like a massive tease because I didn't spoil too much in the demo, but yeah, that's the general gist of it.
Yeah, and you make no qualms about this is a very short game, maybe a 2 hour game experience overall. So
Yeah.
playing like 20 minutes of the game, I've seen like most of it, right? At this point.
Yeah, I mean, you've definitely got a taste for it. It's basically where the demo ends. After that, the game kind of opens up quite a lot, and you have like some branching choices of which way you want to go. So if I let players continue playing, then they really would be getting quite a large portion of the game. So I had to stop there. But
yeah, and it ends on such a blue balls cock tease moment at the end, because just when things are about to get juicy, it's like that the abrupt and like
Thanks for playing.
demo's over, guys. Bye.
Give me your money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wish list, please. But the demo it really does set the tone for what the game is gonna be. And one of the moments I was caught off guard with was early on in the last stop cafe where Chris sort of stumbles into after being on on the road for a little bit. And there's this, sort of a shopkeeper or employee of the cafe. And she's like, "Oh yeah, go. Can you make your own coffee? And can you check the radio? And can you fix my lights?" And I'm like, what kind of place is this?
Yeah,
What
yeah.
is what is going on?
It's strange, isn't it? Chris does most of the work himself. Yeah. Yeah, we won't go too deep into that, but it also doubles up as a nice tutorial. So,
Right. I mean,
yeah,
that's like where you get like game mechanics. I get it. It's funny how this guy just came out of the rain and is sort of lost, and she's just like, "I'm wiping down these tables. Can you just go fend for yourself and also be a mechanic? And I'm not
yep,
going to pay you at all for your help." But
yeah,
it speaks to why I like these kind of games so much. It's that sort of uncomfortable, awkward, like David Lynch style exchange between characters. If it
yeah,
feels like if I were there, I would have said things differently, but you still can't look away from the exchange in a way. And it's just something unnerving underneath the dialogue.
yeah.
It's like, what's really going on between these two characters?
Yeah, we really set out with the dialogue, like with how I wrote it and also how I was directing the voice actors for that. It's sort of, I had to tell them to downplay some of the lines a bit because
Mm,
I wanted that kind of moody, sort of a bit melancholic kind of
mm,
atmosphere that you get with Lynch. And I think Silent Hill nailed it as well.
mhm.
That's just sort of no one's like super excited to talk to each other.
Right.
But it still sounds, it sounds genuine. It's a bit less like a big movie action hero character, a bit more like just chatting to someone on the phone or something.
Mhm.
So yeah, there was some intent there to kind of, because I wanted to make sure we had really good voice actors in it, of course, but also yeah, try and find voice actors that fit that mold that could pull that off, which I was quite happy with in the end.
Is the resume like I've watched Twin Peaks like 6 times to like get to like land a role like that?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, so yeah, I one of the Welsh female voice actors. She was in a game called The Cat Lady, and that had like a similar kind of vibe. It's an old point and click horror game from, I don't know, maybe sort of 7 or 8 years ago now. But yeah, she was great in that, and like managed to get in contact with her like this far on, and she's still doing voice acting. Has a bit of a better setup now for recording as well, which was nice. So yeah, she definitely got the brief, and yeah, the main guy did as well. He was great.
So I'm eager to jump into the sort of graphic style of the game and the aesthetic, but I kind of want to save that for the end. So I kind of want to dive into the core gameplay of Chasing Static because on the surface you can mistake it for, oh, it's just a lo-fi walking sim with maybe some jump scares here and there, and then it kind of like, okay, roll credits and it's over. But this has what you call sonic exploration. Can you go into that detail and what is that all about and how does that mechanic work in this game?
Yeah, I mean, so to start with, it's a cool term. It's like
Mm,
it catches people's eye.
yeah.
I have to admit, it was like I did make a point of like drawing attention to that for marketing purposes because I didn't want people to think it was just another sort of run of the mill walking simmy horror thing, which I mean it is to an extent. But yeah, the sonic exploration is you get this device in the game which kind of scans radio waves. It has like a directional microphone on it, and it's hooked up to this modified typical sort of consumer radio, and you basically explore the environment scanning for echoes of past conversations. So as you're exploring these different locations, like the underground abandoned tunnels, which are old war World War II tunnels that have been converted into like a storage station for this research facility. So you use this device to scan the areas as you're walking around, and like the closer you are to the origin of a signal, the dial on the device increases, and then you sort of see a brief flashback, like a moment in time, sort of frozen, of something that's happened in the past, and that'll help you uncover the truth behind the story for the game, but also help you progress through the game and solve the game's puzzles, because it has hints to what you need to do next.
Right, and you've also decided to go for a non-linear progression system as well for
Yeah, I
Chasing Static.
sort of tiptoed around the word of saying open world, because it's obviously open world makes you think of like stuff like The Witcher and GTA, but it's essentially sort of about 4 large maps, large areas that have puzzles in them, that you can approach at your own pace, so you can choose which way you want to go. Most of the puzzles are self-contained to each area, but you basically have these free tasks that you have to undertake when you get to a certain point in the game, and you can choose which one to do first. So you can kind of just explore the area as you like. You get a little reminder if you've gone to an area and you haven't discovered everything in that area, so it will pop up on the screen saying undiscovered key items are available here. But yeah, it just allows the player to sort of have a bit more like freedom and a bit more choice in what they want to do, rather than just being like one linear game that a lot of walking sims are.
Right. It reminds me a lot of Visage. I don't know if you played that one before. It takes
It's
place.
Yeah, it's on my list, to be honest.
Oh, that's a good one. It takes place in a house, and you can get different keys that unlock specific doors. And it's a similar structure where each room opens its own little vignette of a puzzle and a story, and then you can approach them in any order you would like. So I kind of like how there's that freedom to move around, and it also opens up getting lost, which happens in
Yeah.
games like that. I remember playing the demo, and there was a voice that was saying like, "Don't go in the woods," and I was like, "Oh, I'm going in the woods," and I will get lost in those damn woods.
Yeah, that led to a lot of people just like let's players and stuff like, yeah, god damn it, I'm going to the woods. You can't stop me.
Why?
Yeah.
Why limit this? Because you know the game is beautiful, and it's oozing atmosphere, and knowing that it's going to be just 2 hours going in just shatters me completely. Why settle on a short story that only lasts for 2 hours when this could have been a much larger scale project? What's the vision behind that?
So I just come off the back of a long game project. My last project, Guard Duty, was my first commercial game. It's like a 2D pixel art point and click adventure.
Mhm.
And that took me forever to finish making, because I sort of started it when I was a lot younger, didn't know what I was doing, learned a lot along the way, and then it was ended up being about 4 years of seriously working on that, like trying to get it out the door and trying to get it shipped. And yeah, it was just too big in scope. It's sort of a 6 to 8 hour game, and took me a long time. I'm a solo developer as well, so yeah, I like to tell stories, but I decided after that I want to try and tell sort of smaller, more intimate stories, and also, yeah, be able to tell more of them. So, like, the really fun bit as a game developer is when you finally get to release it and people get to play it and you get to see reactions. And I think a lot of your learning and development as a developer is like watching people play it and learning about things that you did wrong or things that you could improve upon. So, this story could be expanded, and I'm not saying there's not going to be like any kind of expansion to the story after release,
Mhm.
because there's potential there. I'd see how the release goes, but yeah, it's a self-contained story, and it's shorter than like AAA games and stuff, because I think some people just don't have the time for big games as well. It's nice to have
Right.
like options of shorter games. And yeah, I've been saying it's 2 hours. I think a lot of our testers took between sort of 3 to 5 hours, but
Mhm.
obviously they're trying to test everything, trying to break everything.
Right.
So it really does depend on like how slow you go through it, whether you want to find all of the sort of hidden secrets and stuff. But just so people aren't disappointed, I've been saying 2 hours. It might be a bit longer depending on the
Right.
player. But
I mean, just for me, like, because I love games that look and adopt this sort of art style, that PS1 lo-fi vibe to it, and I want more of it, which is why it being a shorter game is like, okay, it's like I want to play more of this game. But the other side of that conversation is you have a very small window of time to make an impact. It's like watching a short one-off Netflix series that's like 6 episodes long. It's like, well, how can this resolve in like 2 episodes? And you know it's gonna go like
yeah,
really go off the rails by the time it gets towards the end.
yeah, it's yeah, I did try and approach it like a film. It's sort of like, yeah, it's sort of influenced by a lot of different films that I like, and the sort of pacing of the way films are paced, like the hero's journey. I tried to incorporate that into the pacing of the game the best I could. Um, Obviously within my means as well. Like I say, solo developer, so there's like
Mhm.
only so much that I can pull off on my own. But yeah, I'm happy with the pacing of it. I think it worked out all right.
What are some of your key influences for Chasing Static? What film and media are you consuming and looking to when you're putting your little horror gem together?
Um, yeah, I mean, I sort of I can get pretty heavily influenced by stuff that I watch or play, and I try to sort of take my mind off of work, because when you develop games, you find if you're playing games, they're like influencing your development a bit. So I tried to separate that. But
Mm.
that said, film wise, I think I watched Annihilation again, the
Oh,
like
it's a good
Netflix
one.
original.
Yeah.
That's probably like most similar in tone to Chasing Static, in regards to you've got this kind of mysterious like dead zone that people go into. But yeah, I absolutely love Ari Aster. I love like Hereditary and
Oh yeah,
Midsummer.
Midsummer. Yeah.
They're fantastic. And also like films like Us and yeah, that series of films. But I guess yeah, I rewatched Event Horizon and I rewatched The Thing, because they're both sort of sci-fi horror-y kind of stuff. Event Horizon's one of my favorite films ever, just because it's kind of like Silent Hill in space, like to the
Mm-hmm.
extreme. It's like
Mm-hmm.
demons and sci-fi, brilliant. But
And
yeah, and obviously it's influenced by like David Lynchy kind of vibes and the Silent Hill vibes as well, which most horror games are these days. But
it's funny you mentioned Event Horizon because I recall not too long ago someone saying on Twitter, I forget what her name was, which I don't care what her name was because she's dumb. She was saying that you can't do horror in space. And I was like, have you seen Event Horizon, lady?
yeah, yeah, I mean, yeah, I think I saw that as well when it cropped up. It's a really, really bold thing to say that I
Yeah.
don't think many people agreed with. But
Well,
I
like
think it's like, oh, sorry, carry on.
so you don't wake up often and see Event Horizon trending on Twitter.
Yeah, yeah, it was a pleasure to see it trending, but maybe not for that reason. But yeah, I think like sci-fi horror is harder to pull off because
Mm-hmm.
there's not as much related. It's not as relatable as something set in like the modern day or setting in ye olde times. They're a
Mm-hmm.
bit more grounded. But then if you've got the right actors and you've got the right sort of writer on board, sci-fi horror definitely can work, because it is horror's like a tale about humanity, really, isn't it? It's a human tale. It's about emotions and how people react to fear and scary stuff. So you can set that any way you want, really. It's just yeah, if it's like too grand, I think horror stories tend generally fall apart if they try to be
Mm.
too large in scope and too over ambitious. But yeah, sci-fi could definitely work.
Yeah, I mean, like the thing could have worked easily in a space backdrop setting
Yeah,
because it's all about that the loss of trust, paranoia among your comrades, who's out to get you, and that transcends whether you're in a rural Anytown, USA, or on a spaceship deep floating through the cosmos.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah, it is. It's just yeah, stories about emotions and people, what they
Mm.
feel.
So I do want to jump into my favorite part of this game, and that's the look, the PS1. graphics, because I feel from a young age I was consuming a lot of horror media. I had two older cousins who lived above me who every weekend would drag my ass upstairs and made me watch Nightmare on Elm Street and Child's Play and Slumber Party Massacre
Nice.
at a very tender, impressionable age. And that stuck with me as I got older. That went into playing games like Clock Tower, Silent Hill, Resident Evil, Parasite Eve, all these like amazing horror games. And seeing your game, it just takes me back to that special place when horror was just booming among big AAA game developers and publishers. What is it about this look, this visual style that's so accessible to horror? And why did you choose it for Chasing Static?
Yeah, for me, I think horror works best. I'm sure I've said this before in some sort of interview somewhere, but it's like horror is the fear of the unknown. It's like when things are hard to make out, like when you're walking around your house in the dark and you catch a shadow out the corner of your eye and you can't quite make out what it is, but the shape freaks you out because it like resembles something human and it moved a bit. It's like it hits you. And I think with the kind of lo-fi PS1-ish look, it's harder to make out what is on the screen. And like because it's an intentional look as well, you can really sort of push that in with the art style, with the lighting, and it's easier as well for like someone like me who doesn't have a big team of people. It's a lot quicker for me to make like scenes in that style. Like I can do higher fidelity artwork. I can do kind of fancy AAA-ish stuff, but it would take me the same amount of time to make like the cafe and Chasing Static as it would to make, I don't know, a car for a AAA game. Like the scale is like completely different. So with the PS1 style, not only does it help with the mood and the atmosphere and the horror look, it's also like way quicker to do stuff. And I'm more interested in telling stories and making interactive experiences that still look nice than I am, you know, just spending months and months on really high fidelity stuff. So yeah, with Chasing Static, if I want to have something creepy in the distance, it's crushed down a bit by the resolution, and there's some noise and there's some grain on there, and the differing that they had on the PS1, we've tried to bring that across in the game as well. So like colors are sort of banded and then crunched down to like a sort of differed checker pattern, so things blend in better. Yeah, waffling on about technical stuff here, but
no, yeah, I'm loving
general
all
point
this.
is,
I'm loving all of it.
general point is, it's a little bit lower fidelity, and because of that, it's more spooky. I think,
Yeah,
anyway, personally.
it's incredible how much detail you can still squeeze out of these sort of assets. At the same time, you can hide so much by like just again that crunchy look of things.
Yeah,
Where
definitely.
it's like, what is that shape that just flew right past me? And you can't really quite make it out. It's interesting how a pixel art game has a lot of precision. It's all just squares.
Yep.
And you get more detail. And then you go into a game of today, it's like super high polished, ultra deal. You can make out what's happening easily, but there's that nice in between where the PS1 graphics live, where it's like it lends itself so beautifully to a horror game. And I'm surprised that many more, even the AAA space, don't try to tackle this graphical style more often. Do you think is it a turnoff for most gamers? They feel, well, this is like, oh, look how old this looks. Like, I'm not gonna bother with this, but it could be more effective than your big
Yeah,
budget AAA game that's released today.
it's these AAA studios, they just rely on metrics way too
Mhm.
much. They have far too much data that says, you know, graphics sell, high
Mhm.
fidelity sells, open world sells, loads of missions, long playtime, multiplayer, all this stuff sells. But like it does to your general gaming audience, but like we're carving out a niche here and it's a pretty
Mhm.
big niche. Like
Oh, it is, yeah.
like especially the indie gaming as a whole is becoming way more mainstream. Like compared to even just 5 years ago, like it's more of my friends who generally don't play indie games and historically haven't played indie games, they're now fed up with the AAA space, and they're now finding all these like niche little indie games that they play. And I think that's great. And it allows us to do weird things with art styles, like make it look like a PS1 game. And thankfully, people are still aware that these like indie games are being made, so like they get drawn to it and they think, oh, that looks a bit like Silent Hill. I miss Silent Hill. I'll give that a go. Why not? It's only $15 or whatever.
Right. Or sometimes even just free, like an itch.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, here's a whole game that you can play, and it's like I can sit and watch a dev diary for the Dead Space remake and fawn over like, oh, it's got ray tracing and great lighting now, and it's like it's in 4K, and yes, I love that detail, but like having to choose between what is a more impactful horror experience, I would choose a PS1 kind of game any day over that, because it just gives you so much more with a lot less.
Yeah, I think it's similar to like old horror films being shot on like old, 35mm film, or like watching them on a VHS and stuff. When you've got that kind of grain and that sort of dirt that comes through in the image, but it's as a result of like a technical limitation of the time, it feels a lot more authentic and less like someone trying to do something fancy and failing, and more like someone intentionally going for a particular vibe and a particular style. And yeah, I prefer it too. I've been pretty disappointed with the modern horror like games. I've yet to play Resident Evil Village, but the like Resi 3 remake didn't really tick the box for me. I didn't enjoy that much. The RE2 remake was pretty good, but yeah, it's something I prefer the retro, I must say.
Yeah, those are nice to go back to, having the older games in the back of your mind. Like, oh, it's nice seeing how they've redone like the RPD station in a modern setting with modern assets and graphics and all the
Definitely,
bells
yeah.
and whistles. And ditto for Dead Space, or if we ever get like a Silent Hill remake at some point, God willing, years from now.
Yep.
It's we have the reference point, so it's nice to see it evolve. But if someone asked me, hey, we're going to do a Silent Hill sequel, but it'll look like a PS1, I'd be like, yeah, do it right now. Like, don't waste any time. And there's something also about your game that feels like inescapably Silent Hill, and it's in such a way where it's not trying to copy or imitate. It's in its DNA, but it's also its own thing. Like when you open that demo, you feel like there's the grain, and there's that somber kind of piano medley playing in the background.
Yeah.
And it gets you, like it's in your bones, that little discomfort and fear. And it's again what modern games can't quite get, which is probably why they shy away from big budget horror games. And you find, again, Resident Evil, Dead Space, you're capitalizing on, it's an older property, so it's like, hey, fans who missed this for so long, it's back again, go and get it. But we haven't had like a big budget new horror IP since, like, I would say the Evil Within days, and those didn't sell quite that well either.
Yeah, I mean horror was obviously at a peak on PlayStation 2 era. So many good horror games on PS2. It's like unreal. Like I still discover horror games on PS2 that I just need to play. But yeah, I think it's been a risky genre for a while. I guess like there was that boom of YouTubers constantly playing horror games and making like reactionary videos to them, and a lot of horror was being put out in that point as well. And I think that's kind of died out, and therefore AAA are a bit more weary of doing it. But I mean, Capcom seem to be doing quite well with the new Resident Evil entries, which is good to see. Konami, well, yeah, least the said about Konami, the better. But it's cool. It just means there's space for indies to like chip in there. And yeah, Chasing Static has a Silent Hill vibe. I'm a huge Silent Hill fan. Like absolutely love every one of the games, even the
Mm-hmm.
Western developed games. They still
Mm-hmm.
have something. They still have a bit of the DNA, and I like that. But yeah, so I tried to bring a bit of that across in the game. Not like you said, it wasn't necessarily intentional. It's just those games had like peak horror game design for me. They really work. So I'm glad. It's good to hear that it comes across.
Well, again, as someone that's played these games countless of times, it comes across so effortlessly. And it's like I understand what you're trying to do and come across, and it's a magical thing. And it
Nice.
makes me feel like I'm 20 years younger, which I can't thank you enough for.
Excellent.
As I just turned like 39 the other day.
That's what I like to hear. Well, yeah, another member of the 30s club. I'm
Right,
33, but yeah,
right. Oh dear
I,
God.
I got a PlayStation pretty early when I was a
Yeah.
kid. I was quite lucky.
So you're releasing in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
What's that like for you? What's going through your mind at this point? This thing is like ready to go and be unleashed upon the world at the best time of the year. What's
Yeah, it's really exciting. It was a bit hit and miss whether or not we would, because we've been waiting for the console ports to get finished of the game. Because we were going to do a simultaneous release on all of the consoles and PC. Um, and yeah, there were some like a few technical hiccups with the console porting, and because of COVID, there were some issues with like translations and stuff got delayed a
mm,
bit, and it got to the point where we had the translations implemented. The PC version had been fully tested, but the console porting wasn't finished, and we just decided that it's October. People they want some spooks. They've been waiting for this game for a long time, especially the people who played the demo on PC.
mm.
So yeah, we're finally putting the game out on PC 2 weeks time. I'm really excited. I hope people enjoy it. Um, it's the last game release I did was super stressful because they just are like it's something you spent the last 2 years or whatever working on, and finally you're releasing it. So it's really important, especially with Steam. It's super important to get day one right, because if you can get like X amount of people to buy the game and review it on day one, then you're going to get fed into their algorithm, and then you're going to start cropping up on the front page of Steam and stuff. So there's a lot of pressure on it, but yeah, I'm really excited, really happy to get it out. I'm happy with the game, which is quite a surprise. I'm normally a bit of a perfectionist, but
Mm.
I feel like I achieved what I set out to achieve with that game. So yeah, just excited, really,
I
mostly.
swear, I think indie game devs are like a bit of masochists because they go through all the stress and then they just do it all over again, time and time
Yeah.
again.
Yeah, I'm like very slowly starting the next project at the moment, and it's so intimidating because you know you've got to commit to that for the next at least 2 years realistically.
Mhm.
Um, but hey, it's fun, and yeah, as long as
Are
people
you
buy it, it pays
are
the
you
bills. So.
yeah. Are you staying in the same genre, same sort of graphical style for your next project, or maybe try
Um,
something else?
so like I I I've tried loads of different things, to be honest. I've done a bunch of different art tests because I had a bit of downtime whilst waiting for like porting and translations and stuff. And I just keep coming back to the fact that I love PS2 era survival horror games and PS1 era, but I think
Mm.
PS2 era hit the nail on the head. So I'm hoping to do something that is very traditionally a survival horror
Ooh,
game. So
yes.
I've got some like basic
Yes.
combat working and stuff.
Oh, I love it.
It won't be like super action orientated, but I want that
Mhm.
sort of survival element of like very very limited ammo, mostly melee weapons, like
Mhm.
really obscure puzzles that have like
Mhm.
notes jotted around that hint to the solution, and third
Mhm.
person, of course. So fingers crossed, if all goes well, that's what I'll do if I can get
Listen,
my head in the game and stick to it. But
if you need some extra funding, you let me know. I will throw my life savings at a PS2 type horror game
nice life
that like
savings could come in
yeah,
handy.
that like invokes the memory of like a Silent Hill 2 or a Rule of Rose or a Haunting Ground or God, there's so many amazing ones on the PS2. It's uh, I mourn a little bit for the horror franchise, but thank you so much for keeping like the essence of it alive because yeah, when you talk about Twitch streamers who like and, not to knock them down, but like feigning fear for your audience's sake. It gets a
Yeah.
little tiresome after a while. And these kind of games know what real horror is all about. I sound so snobbish right now. Like these are the great horror games. The ones that are like 20 years old. This is real horror. Like I'm gatekeeping horror. But seriously, thank you for like really keeping these kind of horror games alive. And if your next one is going to be in that vein, like, are we talking full on tank controls as well? Is that also the idea?
So I've managed to kind of dodge that bullet a bit. It's fixed cameras and like adapt. Have you ever played Silent Hill 2 with they call them I think they call it 2D controls in Silent Hill 2.
Right.
There's an alternate
Yeah.
control scheme where it's relative to the camera.
Yeah, it's like where you point, the actual character moves in that direction.
Yeah, which is similar to more modern like AAA third person things.
Right.
But so yeah, I'm toying with that, except I've managed to get around the problem where the character just walks the wrong direction when the camera changes. So yeah, it's sort of similar to tank controls. It feels the same, but hopefully will be a bit more accessible.
I love it. I love it. I should also send you a list of some obscure PS1 horror games I came across over the years. Things that were only in Japan that I never knew existed until maybe like a year or two ago.
Awesome. Yeah, send them over. I've
some really good shit.
Recently I heard that Mizerna Falls has got an English fan translation.
Yes.
So yeah, I did try and make my way through the Japanese version of that on my PlayStation Vita, but yeah, I only got so far, so I might have to give the English one a go.
You are a dedicated man. I love you for that. I tried that too. I couldn't do it.
Yeah, I didn't get far through it, to be honest. Yeah, it was I felt like I was really missing out on something. I wonder what that was. It being all in Japanese.
It reminds me when I played Final Fantasy 12 for the first time. I got the import version.
Oh yeah.
But I had like the GameFAQs translation as I was playing alongside.
I did that with Metal Gear Acid on the PSP, because the PSP came out in Japan about 6 months before the UK over here.
What a fun little franchise the Acid series was. I sort of miss it. Card-based Metal Gear title. Like, what an idea.
Yeah, back when you could afford to do stuff like that without it being a mobile game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just saw there's like a Wipeout mobile game that's coming out that's not a racing game but a card game. And I'm like, oh, that's weird.
Yeah, sad.
All right, Nate, let's dive into some rapid fire questions to put you out of your misery, because I could go on about PS1 PS2 horror for like the rest of the day if you haven't noticed.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of talking potential chats to happen there, but yeah, we'll save your audience.
What are your thoughts on Rule of Rose, and why wasn't that game ever get a sequel?
Yeah, controversial game.
Exactly. All right, so let's start things off with a fun question I've always asked myself late at night, and that is, if you were stuck in your own version of Silent Hill, what would that look like to you?
Right, it probably wouldn't be sexy nurses. I don't think I have that same sexual frustration that James does, but probably like loads of unfinished projects. Is that a thing? Like just like hard drives absolutely rammed full of data that are constantly coming out with warnings saying you're running out of disk space.
Right. But you have to like translate that. So it's like it's a monster that's sort of missing a lot of parts.
Yeah.
And it's like got like half a face.
Yeah, but it's also like overflowing with some kind of parasites or something that just yeah. You probably think like if most of my like nightmares are like stress related dreams because I've got like stuff on or like things I wanted to finish that didn't finish. I do have some deeper, darker personal issues, but yeah, I'll save your audience from that. But
what is something that you're afraid of that wouldn't make sense to someone else. And I'll give you an example, a personal one, and for me that's crash test dummies.
All right.
So it goes back to, there was a commercial about crash test dummies and then buckling up, and the way their head like turned towards the camera, just haunting to me.
Yeah.
So to a normal person, it's like, that's not scary. So what's something that kind of gets under your skin that for most of us is like, what's wrong with you?
Um,
What's your irrational fear? That's how we should put it.
yeah. I mean, one of them's kind of irrational, but I'm really claustrophobic. I really hate tight
Mm,
spaces, and it all
mhm.
stems from when I was a kid. There was like this organized school trip to like an adventure like park thing where you did like mountain climbing and stuff. We were really young, and we did this thing where we went down into these caves, and there was this one point where you had to like climb through a really small hole in a cave, and it was partially submerged underwater, and I really didn't want to do it. And I was forced by these teachers, genuinely pushed through this hole and dragged through the other side, because that was where all the other kids were going. That was where we were going on this like walk through the caves or whatever. And it proper scarred me for life. Like I'm really claustrophobic now. So yeah, there's that.
God. Oh my
Probably a
God.
myriad of other things as well, but that's like probably the most entertaining story.
Um, Silent Hill not included, because that's like, I think it's the obvious answer for you. If you were given the chance to work on an established horror IP that's been sort of long dormant, which one would you pick?
Um, long dormant, possibly. I guess like the Fatal Frame, sort of
Mm,
Project Zero, depending on where you're
yes.
from. That franchise could really do. Although I don't know if I could do it justice because I'm not Japanese.
Right.
And obviously a lot of the folklore and stuff for those games is based around that. But I'd love to see that come back.
I mean, you could
Yeah,
always get some consultants on the team. I mean,
yeah. I
you're
mean,
just the head. It's your game, but you can bring in some folks to help you with all
yeah.
that.
All right, we'll go with that. I'll say that one.
Yeah, that was Fatal Frame 2 is up there in one of my
Yeah,
all-time favorite horror games. God,
that's the
PS2
game.
era. Shit.
Yep. This is it.
um, if you were in a horror movie, if we're casting you in a horror film, do you see yourself more as the final girl or the killer? What does your temperament and personality fall between those two categories?
I mean, yeah, I'm probably the final girl, I guess. Um, yeah, I've always figured that if the world is going to end, I'd be the one who's stuck left at the end on my own. So I guess yeah, I'm the final girl.
Okay, so on that, who's your favorite final girl? Like we're talking like, think about like Nancy from Nightmare on Elm Street, or those kind of
Yeah,
characters.
it's hard
Who
to say. Also,
who comes to
shamefully
mind?
hard to remember names.
There's just too many.
Yeah, we'll say Nancy. I mean, Nancy's a good one.
I feel like Nancy and I would get along well. I mean, you know, here's a fun story. I actually owe Nightmare on Elm Street and Nancy credit for landing my first big job at Google,
Oh,
because
really?
I think there was a question in like the 5,000 interview process about a film that you had watched recently and a character that relates to you in some way.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh, Nightmare on Elm Street, Nancy, because she like did that whole improv trap situation at the end. And I feel like her and I would be on the same page when it came to trapping a killer,
Yep.
just being like super MacGyvery about it, like putting shotgun powder in in a light bulb.
Yeah, yeah, it's relatable for me too. The whole adventure game scenario, like
Mhm.
combining your inventory items.
Yeah,
Sorry, big fan of adventure games as well.
I know, I know. Those games are a lot of fun. Yeah, and that kind of bleeds into horror too, like the whole like combining shit. As long as it makes sense
Yep.
for me. Like I
Yeah, I mean,
can't.
survival horror games are just point and click adventure games with combat, as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
I'm sure I'll upset a lot of people by saying that, but it's essentially the same game.
What is something you have done that should have gotten you killed?
What isn't something I've done? God,
Making games.
yeah, far too many things. When I was a bit younger, not that much younger, but like my late teens, 20s, were pretty wild. There was a lot of parties, a lot of um, substances, and like drinking and other things, and like getting caught up in fights with the wrong kind of people because I lived in a small town and there were a lot of we called them chavs, but you know, like jocks, kind of like preppy assholes, basically. A lot of
Right.
people like that. And there used to be quite a lot of fights between them and like the goth rocker kids, which was us.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I've been in probably 3 car crashes. Obviously, not super duper serious ones, but like living in the country with small roads where it rains a lot and like maybe driving a bit too quick when we were younger. Yeah, I've survived quite a lot.
My
I was
God.
in my sort of mid to late teens. Bunch of pretty horrible stuff happened in my family, but anyway, I ended up with like a house, living on my own in a house. So like obviously all my mates came to my house and we had a lot of parties and stuff. So it was pretty wild. It was a really great
Mhm.
time. But yeah, probably shouldn't have survived that part of my life, but I did. Still here. So
I think that's why you're making horror games now. Take a certain level of trauma and alcohol and drug abuse to
yeah.
tell a proper horror story. It's like it's a very Stephen King thing too. I'm pretty sure like half of his stuff is like co-authored by cocaine. If you think about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, speaking of, what word best describes you when you've had a little too much to drink or too many drugs
Um
in your system? Apparently.
yeah, maybe not so much drugs anymore. But no, I'm if I've had too much to drink, I'm generally just a jolly, outgoing person.
Mhm,
I I like to chat and meet new people when I'm drunk. So yeah,
mhm,
normally just try and make friends with everyone.
mhm. Someone close to you, let's say it's a partner or a close friend or a family member, gets a phone call in the middle of the night saying you've been arrested. What crime have you committed, Nath?
Saying I've been arrested or they've been
Yeah,
arrested.
you've been arrested. It's
Okay.
like, hello, Nate, special someone, or mom, or dad, or sibling, or boss.
It'll probably be something really stupid like
Mm-hmm.
repeated failures to pay a bill that they have like sent me about 10 reminders for, and I've just like pushed it under a stack of other letters. And
Love it.
eventually they're like, we're sending some people around, mate. You're gonna get nicked. We're taking you down. The
They're gonna,
Rosses are coming and we're taking you down the station.
they're gonna
It'd be
arrest you
something
for
really
not,
stupid like that.
gonna arrest you for not paying your light bill.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if you leave it long enough, maybe.
Mm-hmm. What is what is he's stealing all the electricity? What is a body part that you wouldn't mind losing?
I wouldn't mind losing.
Mm-hmm.
My little toe. Does that count, or is that
The little
cheating?
toe, the little
Yeah,
pinky toe.
just like the tiny little one,
Yeah,
like the
yeah.
smallest thing possible. Um, yeah, I often think I would be super sad if I lost like hands or
Mm-hmm.
hands, eyes, and ears, like stuff I used to draw, play guitar, listen to music, and like watch stuff. So pretty normal response there. They're the things I wouldn't want to lose. So I guess like yeah, my toe or my foot maybe
Mm-hmm.
if I had to
Right.
choose one.
Let's say, yeah, I think toe is too simple, so we'll go with the whole foot.
Yeah. Okay.
just to raise the stakes a little
Chop.
bit.
See you later, foot. That's all right. I can get an artificial foot.
You're gonna have a foot to make games. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd spend all day sat down anyway. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Would you rather have an exact clone of yourself or $1 million tax-free in cash?
Ooh. That's really tricky. $1 million is a lot of money, but a clone,
Hmm.
I don't know. I'd say the money, and then I would hire some
Mhm.
other creative people because I would
Mhm.
want a clone so they could like work with me on games and stuff. But
Mhm.
ultimately, I'm probably better off hiring other people because they would bring more to the table
Mhm.
than just like an exact copy of myself.
Right. Say you had a clone though. Do you think which path do you think your life would go down? Like more of a romantic family comedy, like a Multiplicity, or like a sci-fi horror, like an Imposter, like a Replicant? What 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 would you veer towards?
Yeah, I don't know. I would try and be nice to the clone and treat them
Mm.
well,
Mhm.
but then I don't know what they're thinking. Like,
Would you trust your own clone,
mm, no.
or would you think it'd be always out to replace you ultimately?
Yeah, he'd probably have quite a big ego that is like he doesn't necessarily show all the time, but ultimately he wants to be the one that gets the credit for everything, which is why he makes games solo. Um, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't trust myself, so I don't think I'd be willing to have a clone of me walking around. It sounds like a disaster upon the
yeah,
world.
I mean,
Like
yeah, it can't end well, can it?
it's like one, there's two of me walking around, so that's already horrible. And then
Yeah, you'd have to do twice the amount of washing as well. Jesus, I didn't think about that.
oh
Yeah,
God.
you'd be constantly running out of pants.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, yeah. No, we'll go with the money. The money's good.
Um if there was one horror game or any game for that matter, um that you could wipe from your memory and experience again for the first time, what game would that be?
Um, it would be It would be Silent Hill 2, but also
Mm,
like I think like Metal Gear Solid 1 would
mhm.
be one I'd like to.
Yeah.
So I played that game so much and I absolutely love that game. It'd be cool to play that fresh again.
Mhm.
Um, and like also the Evil Within 2, which is an
Oh yeah.
underrated gem. I
It
love that
is. It
game.
really is.
I bounced off it the first time I played it. I just couldn't get on with the kind of stealth thing at the start.
Yeah.
And then I went back to it and realized how bloody good it is. It's brilliant, really good. I'd like to play that
Yeah.
again
I think
without knowing it.
they just announced who was it? Tango Gameworks. They're working on a new game after
Yeah,
Ghostwire Tokyo comes out. So I'm like, the odds of it being Evil Within 3 are like stacked against it, but we shall see if
yeah, I would
it
love for it to
goes.
be Evil Within 3, but yeah, I'm going to assume it's a new IP.
So I do have to ask you, since you mentioned Silent Hill 2 and it's come quickly in this conversation, what was the first ending you got in that game?
I think it was the In Water ending. Was the
Oh my
first one. It's a
god.
long time ago now, but
Staring at
yeah,
that knife for a long time in that game.
yeah. I yeah, I think I was just like constantly checking the note.
Mm-hmm. Oh boy.
Yeah, I don't know actually. It was quite a long time ago, so it could have been any of them.
What do you think is that game's true ending? I know they all can kind of fit in a sense into the lore of that universe. But how do you think James's story ended in Silent Hill 2?
Um, I think like I mean, yeah, he definitely had the body in the back of the car.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That's a given.
so yeah, I guess the
shit,
in water engine ending.
shit was always, yeah. I feel like it's it's an odd thing because at the end of the day, James did, spoilers for like a 20-year-old game. James did kill his wife. So it's seeing him kind of move on from that and be free of that little a little unfair, but then he's gone through so much to get to that point that I've done this horrible thing. That's why I was in this town to begin with. But I
Yeah,
think
I
after
mean,
go on.
it was a horrible thing, but also it was like, how long had she been ill for? And like,
Mm-hmm.
I think from my understanding, it was at the point where they'd moved her back home for her final days kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. So I think he suffered enough by the end of that game.
Right. Well, then again, it was all like this is such a huge tangent. I told you it could go on forever. These kind of conversations is like he put her out of her misery for a very selfish reason. It wasn't because she was sick. It was like, I'm tired of taking care of you in a sense, and you need to go away. Was a big
Yeah,
part of what was going on in that situation.
yeah.
Anyway, that's for another podcast, and we could do a whole Silent Hill series and discuss
I'm
why
sure there are loads of Silent Hill podcasts out there as well.
why why Silent Hill 4 is one of the best horror games ever made. Moving on. um Here's a question we always ask our guests because it's a horrifying food combination to me anyway. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
I don't mind it if
Mm,
there's like some good other toppings on the pizza to complement flavor, so
mm-hmm,
it's not all pineapple. I
mm-hmm,
quite like sweet on savory food, so yeah,
mm-hmm,
I'll take it if it's available.
mm-hmm. Okay. What is I'm gonna ask you two more questions here. What is the last horror game you played that had a huge impact on you? Could be like one from years ago, something in more recent memory. What
There
was
was
like, oh, that kind of nailed that game nailed it.
That's really tricky. There was apparently it didn't have enough of an impact. It was something I played recently. I really liked. I think Soma was great.
Soma is
Um,
such a good game.
Soma was super cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the ending of that had like quite an impact. For that was great.
I think that game broke a lot of people.
Yeah,
That's a game I won't spoil because it's new-ish. It's still, PS4, Xbox One era kind of game. So
yeah, it's not worth spoiling. But it's a good game,
highly recommended. Yeah.
especially seeing as I like really don't like the Amnesia games. I
Yeah,
just can't
I'm the
get along
same
with
way.
them.
Yeah. And that's like sort of like the games that spawn this whole like you're in a house walking sim kind of horror genre,
Yeah, but
which so many
yeah,
better games have spawned from that. But Amnesia never quite clicked with me as a horror game. I was like, I'm not getting it.
yeah, I always found the setting kind of dull. Like I finished
Yeah.
it when it
Mm-hmm.
like near its release date, and then I've tried replaying it recently, and I just can't
Mm-hmm.
bring myself to do it. But Soma was amazing. A
Mm-hmm.
completely different game in my regards.
Mm-hmm. And I think to sort of wrap things up, might be a hard question to you because even now I'm like thinking of an answer for it. What is an obscure horror game that you think people haven't played enough of or given enough attention to that deserves a shot from people, a recommendation?
Um, I would probably just shout out to like the whole haunted PS1 community,
Mm-hmm.
because there are some absolute gems
Right.
in there. Ones that um, my friends, Cloak and Dagger Games, they make some pretty cool games. They make like point and click adventure games, but some of them are horror. There's one called Football Game, which is just great. It's like a short, kind of moody game about American football, but it's creepy as, and yeah, that's
Ooh.
worth checking out.
See,
Super like lo-fi, pixely.
I'm typing as you're speaking because I don't want to forget because I'm gonna download this stuff as soon as we get off the call.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Football Game by them. I think it's out on consoles as well. Well, it is, yeah.
Football game into that. I don't like sports. This is what's gonna turn me into sports. A non
There,
a non-sports board game.
I've got such a terrible memory, but there was
Oh.
one. I think it's called the Enigma Machine that I really enjoyed as
Mm.
well.
Oh, this game looks cool. It's like in a little school setting. It's like got some pixel art going on. Oh, I'm into
Yeah,
this.
it's like if you're into like horror and David Lynch, that game is like
Mm.
ticks all the boxes. It's like really short, really slow, moody game, but loved
And
it. And
it only costs $2.
yep, yeah, those guys they make some good cheap games.
Ooh, there's a bundle for 16.15. I'm getting that. Support the indie games, folks. All right, Nath, thank you so much for joining us on
Thank you.
this wild ride of horror this week, the first of many to come. Before we say our goodbyes, where can we find more about you, Headwear Games, Chasing Static? Give us the whole PR marketing spiel right now.
Yeah, you can find my website at headweargames.com. So you go there and it's got some information about Chasing Static and my previous game. You can follow me on Twitter at Headwear Games and Instagram and Facebook too, which I don't really post on. So yeah, just follow me on Twitter and you'll get the up-to-date news on whatever I'm working on at the time, which is sometimes shots of the new project. So if you want to follow along, you might get to see what I'm working on next.
All right, and what's the cost again for Chasing Static? I'm just curious.
We are going for $15
Mhm.
with a launch discount for the first week. We haven't decided on
Love it.
what the discount is yet, but it will be a
Love it.
decent discount to convince you to buy on the first week.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm buying that shit day one. All right.
Nice. That's
that's
what I like
gonna
to hear.
that's gonna do it for this week. Thank you, Nate. Thank you for
Thank
coming
you.
on and sharing this amazing game with us. I cannot wait to play it. I mean, a game that's of this length, I'll be playing it over and over again to get every little nook and cranny, every secret, every little thing, every Easter egg.
Nice.
And I can't wait. So for those out there, please pick up this game when it comes out on the 14th. And as always, please be excellent to each other.